is an art. Tea leaves from the same tree can be brewed into many different varieties. White tea, green tea, yellow tea, oolong tea, red tea, black tea. China has been known as the homeland of tea. The first tea plant was grown here, and both the ancient and modern Chinese people have come to view tea as a means of communicating with heaven and earth. A tea leaf falls into water and changes the taste of it. Henceforth, tea was born. Tea was born from the encounter between water and fire, life and death. The fate of tea is the fate of our people. Every year in March, Su Go-wen and his family harvest the spring tea leaves on Jingming Mountain in Yunnan. The tea leaves come from the ancient tea forests of Jingming Mountain. These are the best tea leaves to make Yunnan pu'er tea. Su Go-wen is the son of the last chief of the Blang people. His people believe that they descended from the spirit of tea. Although most of the tea leaves from Jingming Mountain are pressed into tea breaks, Blang people mostly drink tea made from loose leaves that have been stored for a year or more.
When it comes to making tea, in our culture, we usually make cao cha from fresh tea leaves.
The tools used to brew cao cha were all made from the earth. The tea leaves are shaken and mixed with charcoal. This is done to get rid of the impurities that are inherent in the tea leaves and to draw out the fragrance of the leaves.
When people here would go to work in the fields, they wouldn't come back even if they had forgotten their lunch. But if they forgot their flask of tea, they would forget about going to work and come home instead. They need tea to get rid of their fatigue. That's why tea is such an inseparable part of Blang people's lives.
tea brewed from these ancient trees is strong in flavor. It is extremely bitter at first taste, but as the flavor rolls around the tongue, it quickly fills the palate with a sweet aftertaste. Su Go-wen and his tribe have lived in this virgin forest for generations. During the Ice Age, the cold waves stopped at the Tibetan Plateau, preserving the ancient trees that existed at that time. The earliest tea trees were found in this virgin forest. The fateful encounter between humans and the wild tea trees has become a myth in the oral tradition of the people here. A story passed down through generations and now woven into the memory fabric of the nation. In mid-April, as the spring harvest on Jingmai Mountain draws to a close, the Blong people celebrate the biggest festival of the year, the Tea Ancestor Festival.
Every year we celebrate the Tea Ancestor Festival. For the small rite, most festivities happen on the 16th. If it's the big ritual, most festivities will happen on the 17th. Everybody will go to the top of the mountain and sacrifice an ox to our ancestors.
Su Go-wen's father died in 1988. Before he died, he told Su Go-wen to do 3 things: build a school in the Blong Mountain, write a history of the Blong people, and build a temple for the spirit of tea. Su Go-wen has accomplished these 3 things.
Only by knowing how one was born and raised will he be able to repay his debt to his ancestors and family. Only by doing so will he find his meaning in life.
The 76-year-old Su Go-wen believes that the spirits of his ancestors are still present in this forest.
Every time we start a new tea plantation, we'll name the oldest tree in the garden the Spirit Tree. We place spirit staffs next to these trees, which we consider the guardian trees of the garden.
The Festival of the Tea Spirit is held every 4 years. During this festival, the Blong people of Jingmai Mountain will congregate in the Pa Ai Lung Temple. There, the villagers use spring water soaked in tea to wash the statues in the temple. Then they offer their best new leaves to their ancestral prince. The ancestral prince of the Blong people is Pa Ai Lung. According to legend, he discovered the medicinal properties of tea leaves 1,800 years ago when his people were struck with an epidemic. Because of these leaves, he managed to save his entire people.
We're going to the top of the mountain to summon the tea spirits. We believe that in every piece of land where there is a tea tree, there's also a tea spirit. We want to summon all the tea spirits to celebrate this day with us. They gave us wealth. Every generation of the Blong people needs to remember that. We must not forget this. they will come back and protect us and all the ancient tea trees that grow around here.
The ancient tea trees that stretch from the southwest to the southeast of China have been cultivated over the years to the shrub form that we know today. The cultivation of these tea shrubs has made it easier to harvest the tea leaves. The many varieties of tea leaves from these shrubs are what has made Chinese tea famous the world over.
I came here 25 years ago during the winter. It was really cold then. I arrived on the 22nd of January in 1987. I've been living here since then.
Carbonella Bonella was originally from Italy. She now uses a Chinese name, Tang Yun.
Welcome! Here comes a customer! Please come in!
I'm Italian. Of course, I love coffee. But since I came to China, I started drinking tea.
Long Jing is her favorite variety of Chinese tea. Long Jing is her favorite variety of Chinese tea. Unlike other foreigners, the Long Jing tea in the Beijing tea houses cannot satisfy her. In April of 2013, Tang Yun goes to Hangzhou. She's here to spend the tea season with a family of tea growers. During the spring harvest every year, some tea growers will receive tea lovers as guests. These tea lovers come in search of the best tea. They want to experience what it takes to make a good cup of tea. They live and work with the tea growers during this time. In the areas south of the Yangtze River, they are known as tea kindreds. Tang Yun is the tea kindred of this Longjing grower, Uncle Chen.
We don't keep old leaves. Tea picking is the first stage. If we pick only the highest quality leaves, they will taste better. We need to pick the leaves in the middle of two leaves. It doesn't matter how big they are.
My fingers have turned black.
Yes.
Tea picking is really tiring. We wake up at 6 in the morning to go to the plantation. Then we go back for lunch. After lunch, we return to the plantation and pick until it gets late. It's a really tiring job.
Longjing refers to the tea, the place, the village, and its spring. The ancient Chinese believed that a dragon resided in this well, and that is why it is known as Longjing, the Dragon Well. The tea growers of Longjing village are very knowledgeable about the tea. In their free time, they love chatting with tea lovers who come from afar.
This place is heaven's gift to us Longjing tea growers. When Emperor Qianlong came here hundreds of years ago, he stopped at Longjing village. After he tried the tea here, he didn't say anything. But 3 years later, he conferred its special imperial status. Emperor Qianlong even wrote about the Dragon's Well tea. That was a piece of history he left here.
Tea leaves are mostly produced with machines today. But just 15 years ago, Longjing tea was entirely handmade.
Before there was electricity, how did you fire the leaves?
Back then, we used firewood. When we first started, we were only 16. We didn't know how to fire the tea leaves, so they put us to work making the fire.
Longjing tea is a type of unoxidized green tea. Green tea is one of the most popular types of tea in China. People love green tea for its lightness and color. It has also become increasingly popular for its health-enhancing properties, especially for its ability to prevent cancer. Longjing tea is yellow-green in color. The likeness of its color reminds one of Chinese ink paintings. Longjing tea has a gentle, sweet taste. The tea growers put it in more rustic terms. It has the fragrance of lightly fried fava beans. It is a pleasure for the senses.
Chinese people drink tea all the time. They drink tea all day. It makes them calm and balanced. I think they use tea to even out their emotions and also to create another level of consciousness. That's what I like about it.
There is a long history of drinking tea in China. In Sichuan, a contract dating from the Han Dynasty was discovered recently, which detailed the duties of servants at the time, going to the market to buy tea, making tea for their masters, and cleaning the tools to make tea. The tea houses in Sichuan are always crowded. The workers try not to bother the customers by getting too close to them. Because of that, somebody came up with an ingenious invention, the long pot. Pouring tea from the long pot has evolved into a beautiful art form of its own, featuring a series of 18 moves.
My name is Yang Yisin. I'm a fourth-year student at the university. I've been learning the long pot ceremony for over 3 years now. I first started learning about tea and the long pot from my parents. My parents really love drinking tea.
The city Chengdu is one big tea house. Every tea house there is a microcosm of Chengdu.
The first time I saw the ceremony, I was 17 years old. As a girl, I would look so cool doing it.
You need to practice a lot harder to master this. Be careful.
I'm so clumsy.
Just keep practicing.
Show me.
You need to try harder. All right, try again.
Why wouldn't you teach me that move?
It's not about teaching you. You can't do it anyway.
Why can't I do it?
You just can't. You're not as fast as everyone else.
I'll practice hard.
Even if you practice hard, you're not strong enough.
The teacher tells Zhang Yixin that to master this ceremony, one must first learn more about tea. 100 kilometers away in Ya'an, there is a mountain called Mengding Mountain. According to legend, a man named Wu Lijian planted these 7 tea trees 2,000 years ago during the Western Han Dynasty. His descendants built a tea garden around these 7 trees and called it the Imperial Tea Garden. It has been known since then that good tea is made from the water of the Yangtze River and the leaves from Mengding Mountain. Zhang Yixin is looking for a person who lives on Mengding Mountain.
You're too antsy. You need to quieten your mind to pick tea leaves here every day.
This man is Cheng Xianqin. He is old enough to be Zhang Yixin's grandfather. More than 10 years ago, he created his own version of the long pot ceremony and passed it down to his son, Cheng Bo. But what Cheng Xianqin is really good at is producing tea. Zhang Yixin has come at the busiest time of the year here at the mountain. This is the season when Cheng needs to produce a special type of tea leaf that hardly anyone produces anymore. It involves a difficult method of production and meticulous picking.
The tea leaves we're picking today will be used to make Huangya tea. The leaves need to be between 1.5 to 2 millimeters in length. Make sure you pluck them, don't squeeze them.
These leaves are usually used to make high-grade green tea. But Cheng Xianqin is going to make a somber yellow tea out of these leaves instead. This is going to take much more work and time.
The initial firing has to be over 160 degrees. Your hand should be a foot above the pan. You need to feel the heat.
The leaves need to be fired by hand in a pan for 4 to 5 minutes. This dries the leaves and stops the oxidization process.
People have been doing this since the Ming dynasty. The initial firing is to get rid of the smell of chlorophyll. Its fragrance will bloom after it is fired. To oxidize our tea leaves, we heat them together so that it won't oxidize more than 15%. Every time we fire a batch of leaves, we need to wrap them up with straw paper. The paper is porous, so the leaves won't oxidize too much. If you use some other cloth to wrap it, you might ruin the leaves. This is an ancient tradition. Nobody knows why it works, but we know that they look and taste better when you do this.
Yellow tea is a very delicate type of tea. It has the fragrance of green tea, but with an added suppleness. The temperatures at which it is processed need to be controlled precisely. This is hard to do, even for experienced tea producers.
It needs 36 hours to transform.
Cheng Qianqian didn't actually grow up on this mountain, but he and the mountain are old friends, and he knows it like the back of his hand. After all, he's been here for 50 years.
This temple was built during the Three Kingdoms over 1,000 years ago. It was actually really dilapidated. But in 1963, about 100 of us came here from Chengdu to start a tea plantation. You weren't born at the time. I don't think your father was even born at the time. We lived in this temple for 10 years. There were 200 to 300 of us living here. We were the ones who started the plantations around this place. In the past, there were tea trees all around the temple. The monks here would chant and make tea at the same time.
Historically, most of the tree gardens here belong to the temples. The monks believed that planting tea, making tea, and drinking tea were all part of the Buddhist way of life. After the tea leaves have been oxidized for 36 hours, they are fired once again. The tea leaves that come out are yellow. When steeped, they make a yellow tea. Compared to green tea, yellow tea is more oxidized and has a warmer and milder taste. It is the perfect tea for people who have a sensitive stomach. Yellow tea is complex to produce. One slight mistake and the tea is ruined. Today, yellow tea is produced in Sichuan, Hunan, and Anhui province. It is a subtle, reticent tea.
When we brew a cup of tea, the leaves always float on top at first before slowly sinking down into the cup. People are just like leaves. When we're still green and immature, we float near the surface. But after we gain more experience and knowledge, we slowly sink down to the bottom.
The same tea leaves can produce so many different varieties of tastes. Together, they make up the 6 different types of tea. The unoxidized green tea preserves the fresh taste of the tea leaves. The slightly oxidized yellow tea adds a certain suppleness to the taste of green tea. White tea is neither fired nor bruised. It tastes the most of nature. Oolong tea is semi-oxidized to produce a changing, complex fragrance. Fermented tea is the most oxidized. It was once the lifeline of nomadic peoples. Compared to these 5 types of tea, black tea has the most eclectic flavor. Black tea is the most popular type of tea in the world. During the springtime, in Tongmu village in Wuyi Mountain, the smell of pine wood smoke lingers in the air. To most tea manufacturers, this smell completely destroys the flavor of tea. But to the tea producers in Tongmu, this smoky smell is the best smell in the world. It is the secret, in fact, to the first black tea in history, Lapsang Souchong. Every morning, the heir of the Lapsang Souchong technique, Jiang Yanxun, samples tea brewed from leaves that were processed the night before to determine their grade. The tea leaves are judged by the smokiness of the tea and the strength of their longan taste.
Okay. Two A's, one good.
More than 300 years ago, the first black tea in history was invented in this remote village. The story of its invention has been passed down for generations.
At the end of the Ming dynasty and the beginning of the Ching dynasty, an army was passing through Tongmu. The people living in the mountains had never seen soldiers before, so they completely forgot all about their tea leaves. On the second day, the villagers looked at their tea leaves and realized that they were completely changing, that is, oxidizing. They immediately rushed to fire them and then roll and roast them. After they were roasted, the color of the leaves turned black. The tea that they brewed was red. It didn't look like green tea at all anymore. They thought that they had ruined the tea, but they'd already worked so hard for the tea leaves, so they just sent it to Xingcun. Xingcun had a lot of Hokkien merchants at the time, so they just gave the tea to these merchants and asked them to try to sell it. The following year, the Hokkien merchants came back to my family and told them, "We managed to sell your tea from last year. We even got double the usual price for it. It even sold better than green tea. The Europeans especially like your tea."
Today, black tea makes up 80% of the tea produced in the world. When it spread to the West, the English called it black tea. In Chinese, black tea refers to another type of tea, fermented tea. In Tibetan literature, fermented tea is described as a sea of dew. In the mountains of the Tibetan plateau, the air is thin and fruits are scarce. The Tibetans drink tea to get rid of grease and to maintain their fiber intake. For the nomadic tribes of Tibet, Xinjiang and Inner Mongolia, fermented tea is an essential part of their lives. Ancient fermented tea production methods have existed for thousands of years in Sichuan, Yunnan, Hunan, Hubei, and Guangxi. During the spring, 2 weeks after harvesting the first shoots of the season, the tea growers in Ya'an, Sichuan begin harvesting leaves to make fermented tea. The big tea leaves are usually discarded in other types of tea, but these leaves are the main ingredient for fermented tea. Because it is hard to pick these leaves by hand, tea pickers use a special knife. This tea also became known as knife tea. Black tea has the longest production process out of all the types of tea. To bring out its distinctive flavor and to shape the leaves properly, the older leaves have to be rolled repeatedly. This was done with manual labor, and it took a great amount of effort before modern machinery was invented. Today, only the old tea masters in Ya'an's Changsha village still use the traditional manual rolling methods. The leaves are steamed to soften them. They are then put into sacks so that they don't cut the tea producers. The traditional rolling technique requires a wooden plank. This technique needs to be repeated 3 times. The tea made from this technique is called liu cha. Liu cha has been designated as an intangible cultural heritage. Today, modern assembly line production has come to replace the traditional methods of producing fermented tea. Fermented tea is unique in that the leaves are heaped together for fermentation. The moisture from the tea leaves, the pressure from heaping, and the activity of microbes transform the chemistry of the leaves. When the temperature of the heap reaches 70 degrees Celsius, the leaves are tossed repeatedly to ensure their temperature is even. After a week, the leaves turn brown-black. This fermentation process is what gives the tea its health benefits. The tea is not just drunk by nomadic peoples anymore. It is also drunk in the cities. The leaves are finely shaped, pressed into bricks, and then sent off on a long journey to various faraway places. Since the second half of the 20th century, the ancient art of producing tea has become modern and industrialized. These days, tea producers use cutting-edge technology to process tea leaves for mass production and wide consumption. But the ancient techniques are still invaluable sources of cultural significance. The simple act of processing tea by hand keeps the strong Chinese tradition alive in the modern world. The further tea travels, the less wild it becomes. Humanity has always been obsessed with scents. In terms of smell, oolong tea is the most fragrant tea of all. Wuyi rock tea is a type of semi-oxidized oolong tea. The top-grade Wuyi rock tea is known as Da Hong Pao. This name originated from the 6 ancient tea trees that grow on the cliffs behind the Tianjin Yongle Temple. At the beginning of the tea season, a team of tea pickers journey over 2 hours on foot to get to the tea plantation.
The best tea in the Wuyi Mountains grow in the shadow of the cliffs. The leaves that grow here are of the highest standard. Because they don't get much sun, the leaves are much thicker. The tea that is brewed from it will also be stronger. These leaves are completely cut off from the world. Drinking it makes you feel like a Zen monk in the mountains, ascetic and solitary.
After a hard day's work, the tea pickers carry their harvest of about 400 to 600 kilograms of tea leaves. They walk for over 2 hours to the tea factory. The tea master in Tianjin village, Huang Chenghui, insists on making his Da Hong Pao by hand.
In the Wuyi Mountains, making tea is all about having the right people be in the right time at the right place. Only then can one make the best quality tea. It's just like our environment. You need the best tea producers and the best environment to process the tea. The tossing process is very important. At the right moisture level, the edges of the tea leaves will turn red from oxidation. That is the right level of oxidation. We fire the leaves in woks of up to 200 degrees. We need to be extra careful not to burn our fingers. We roll the tea leaves in sieves with rough edges. The way we roll them is like doing Tai Chi. Our hands need to be flexible, and we need to rock back and forth. To make the leaves roll up and around, we need to use our internal strength. Then we fire the leaves again over a gentle fire. We fire them for over 20 hours over a charcoal fire.
The most exquisite Da Hong Pao is fired 9 times over. This makes the tea leaves smooth and shiny like a loach. That is why it is also known as loach fire.
When we drink tea from the Wuyi Mountains, we should slurp it. It's a compliment to the tea producers, like this. We call this action sucking the tea. It allows your entire palate to taste the tea. You can taste all the peculiarities of the tea like this.
Every year, Huang Shenghui goes to the temple and gives the monk some of his tea.
We used to live in the mountains at a place called Water Curtain Cave. We lived close to the biggest temple north of the Ming River, the Tianxin Yongle Temple. The monks here let me stay there for 6 years.
We need to be grateful for the people who drink our tea, because without them, we couldn't exist.
This completely changed the way I view tea. When I returned back here, I decided to dedicate my entire life to it.
Dedicated Buddhists usually love this tea as well. On the coast of the East China Sea, Mount Taimu is the place where ancient monks used to reside. Every few days, Jing will leave the Baiyun Temple to go visit an ancient tea tree on the side of the mountain.
Ancient trees that grow on the mountains usually have lichens on them. These little bugs and small animals will live under these lichens.
This ancient white tea tree is commonly known as the very first Fuding large white tea tree. Tea trees with small leaves don't usually live long. It is quite rare to see a tree like this live to 100 years old, but this particular tree is already 300 years old.
The bugs make their nest in the lichen. Over time, they will devour the entire tree. If there are too many lichens on the tree, the tea will be destroyed by the bugs.
When he was 17 and still a novice monk, Changming came down the mountain with his master to clear the lichens on this tree. He has been doing this for 18 years. The method of making white tea is a very ancient process. The leaves are either sunned or dried, then lightly processed. This preserves most of the leaves' nutritional and medicinal value. The locals here drink white tea as an anti-inflammatory, antibacterial medicine. In the Bailiu village in Fuding, the middle of March is Uncle May's busiest time of the year.
We can't sun it too early in the morning. There is too much fog then, and it affects the quality of the leaves. We need to take it in at night. In the afternoon, the sun is too strong, and it damages the leaves. All this sounds really easy to do, but it's actually really difficult. We need to observe the color of the leaves, whether they're white or black. We need to constantly feel the leaves to see how dry they are. We need to observe them closely. To dry Baihao Yinzhen tea in the sun, we need to be very delicate and careful. When the smoke has dissipated, We put the leaves in. We cannot make it too hot, or we will ruin the leaves.
This expensive white tea is made from exquisite leaves picked right before the Changming Festival. The leaves remain upright when water is added. That is why it is called Baihao Yinjian, or white hair silver needle. The Changming Festival is the busiest time of the year for Baihao Yinjian producers. The people in Bailu village have to postpone their Chingming rituals to the end of April. Mei is a common surname. On this day, everybody in the village who has Mei as his surname gathers in the Mei family hall to worship their ancestors. The tea brewed from white tea leaves is one of the most important offerings to them. White tea is a very popular tea today. It was transplanted here from the Taimu Mountain more than a century ago. The Baiyun Temple hadn't undergone repairs for a while. However, in the spring of 2012, repair work was begun. The temple life is austere and monastic. When Jing first came, he was the only monk here, along with his master. His master taught him how to make tea, and would always keep a flask of white tea with him. Whenever he encountered a villager who didn't feel well, his master would offer him a drink from his flask of tea. Since his master died, Jing continued the temple's tradition of making white tea.
When we're drying leaves in the sun, we have to be very careful. Once I lay them out, I don't touch them with my hands anymore. If there's good weather, like if the wind comes in from the west, I'll lay more leaves out to dry.
This isn't easy on Taimu Mountain, where the sun hardly ever comes out.
It's really cold here, right up to the Changming Festival, so it isn't easy to get a chance to sun the leaves. That's why this tea is a bit of a precious commodity here. You need to have an honest heart when you drink the tea. It's just like when you're meditating. Tea is just like life. It's just like Zen. Tea has a life too, just like people. The more you know about tea, the better. My master always used white tea to heal people. He would put it in a pot to steep and add some salt.
Repairs on the temple will take 1 year. The workers can't get used to the cold and dampness on the mountain. So Jing makes a pot of old white tea for them every day.
The tea is black-brown in color. When you drink it, it helps with colds and hives. It gets rid of the heat in your body. Over time, you realize that everything comes down to inner peace. Life is much better when it's simple. It's just like that when you're drinking tea. I used to explore the different types of tea, its fragrance, its flavor, its color. Now, all I need is a cup of light tea, and that'll do for me.
Today, tea is planted everywhere in the world. Together with coffee and cocoa, it is one of the 3 most common non-alcoholic drinks in the world. This all started thousands of years ago, when the ancestors of the Chinese people first encountered the tea tree in the forest. But it is not the fact that the first tea trees grew in China that makes this country the homeland of tea. Picking the leaves from nature, being close to the tea leaves, transforming the bitter leaves into cups of sweetness and fragrance. All this has made the Chinese people the first companions of tea. Every cup of tea contains 2,000 years of knowledge. Everything in Chinese culture originates from tea. And that is nature.
Before our ancestors passed on, they left us a message that we follow to this day. They said this: if I leave behind cattle and horses, they might die in a calamity. If I leave behind wealth and money, you'll spend it all someday. So I'll leave you this tea garden and all these trees instead. These trees will always regenerate themselves. They never die. You must love them like you love your own eyes. Pass them down to the next generation. Don't ever lose them.
From the tea plantations to the barren plains, from the search for tea to the planting of one's own tea, the lives of the Chinese people have been intertwined with tea. Tea, the story of a leaf. Episode 2, The Road's End.